I'm Reverend J. Stewart Glover, and you are listening to Faith Talk. We are back again today with our beloved friend Stephen Beard, who's going to take us on a conversation concerning prediabetes. He certainly knows more about it than I. So, Stephen, why don't you once again introduce yourself to our listening audience in case they don't know who you are.
All right, and thank you, Reverend Glover. So for anyone who is tuning in for the first time, I am Stephen Beard, and I am a type 1 diabetic for over 24 plus years. And I got into the career field that I'm in because of me being a diabetic. I am a diabetes prevention coach, a nutritionist, a board-certified health and wellness practitioner, and soon to be a functional medicine practitioner as well. So as Reverend Glover had mentioned, we are going to be diving in to the prediabetes topic today.
So when we say you mentioned diabetic type 1, and then we're talking about prediabetes. Is that the same thing?
No, it's not. So prediabetes is more or less, it's a condition where a person's blood sugar levels are higher than normal range, but not high enough to be diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic. So type 2 diabetes is completely different than what I have, which is type 1.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's just kind of define prediabetes and what they really mean by that. I mean, I guess you said the blood sugar levels are elevated. What do those numbers look like? What are the numbers supposed to be for?
Yeah, so for I hate to say for a normal person, so I'll just say for someone who is not a pre-diabetic, your A1C level would be less than a 5.7. So it would be like around a 5.6 or lower. If you're pre-diabetic, then your A1C level would be anywhere from a 5.7 to a 6.4.
Mm-hmm. So again, the importance of knowing those numbers is really important, but the only way you get to know those numbers is by having your blood checked by your doctor and paying attention to what those numbers are and being familiar with what's going on in your own body. So, Stephen, let me ask you this. What happens if, again, the same question, what happens if the prediabetes is left undiagnosed? Or let's start with this. Are there any symptoms? Are there any symptoms of being pre-diabetic?
So great question. And this is what a lot of people struggle with. People typically do not experience symptoms with prediabetes, but everyone can be completely different. So there can be some people who do experience symptoms with prediabetes, and those symptoms are usually type 2 diabetes symptoms. So if they are experiencing those types of symptoms could mean a couple things: that they've been a pre-diabetic for a while and their body is transitioning into full-blown type 2 diabetes, or they can just be pre-diabetic. And those symptoms could be anything from urinating frequently to blurred vision, feeling thirsty, feeling very hungry, even though you have already eaten, extreme fatigue, and tingling or numbness in the hands and feet, which is kind of referred to as a neuropathy if you are a diabetic. And then a very easy one to really pay attention to is any cuts and bruises that are slow to heal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So now my wife is pre-diabetic, and she has one of those home kits that you prick your finger and it measures your blood, the sugar levels, I guess, in your blood.
Correct.
and she does it in the morning before she eats anything. And I think that just for someone who's using that kind of equipment, I think there's a difference between doing it before a meal and after a meal. The results being different.
Yes, there is. And that's actually a great question and something that you actually brought up. So if you're testing your blood sugar in the morning before you eat, you're pretty much fasting. Because hopefully you have slept, and there's about an 8-hour time frame between the last time you had eaten up until when you're testing your blood sugar. So when you do that, you obviously want to make sure that your blood sugar is below 100, because that is going to be normal. If it is above 100, up to like 125, then you're definitely in the pre-diabetes stage. If you are testing your blood sugar after you eat, it's referred to as postprandial. And you want to make sure you're doing that 2 hours after you eat, because that is pretty much the lag time for a non-diabetic to be able to lower their blood glucose after their insulin and glucose spikes after eating a meal.
Mm-hmm. So thank you for that. And we talked when we were offline, we talked a little bit about the issue of being overweight and how that can not help your pre-diabetic condition.
Yes. So being overweight and obesity is one of the main causes of a lot of the metabolic health concerns, and then prediabetes and type 2 diabetes being one of them. Anytime that the body is carrying an excessive amount of weight, whether you're 10 pounds overweight or more, it's going to put a lot more stress internally on your body and on your body's organs. And typically with that excessive weight, it's in the form of body fat, which more than likely is visceral fat, which is lining your internal organs in your abdominal area. And then that is one of the precursors for insulin resistance.
Mm-hmm. You used the term visceral fat. When a person exercises and changes their diet, is the visceral fat coming off as fast as the other fats in your body?
Unless you are actually getting a specific test that actually will measure the amount of visceral fat that you have, we are more or less just looking at our total weight loss. Mm-hmm. To make sure that the numbers are dropping as a whole when we step on a scale. There are some expensive machines like a DexaFit, which are in certain medical offices and hospitals, and I believe certain health insurances may cover that you can actually get complete body composition measurements, which will actually measure your visceral fat versus your subcutaneous fat. But as long as we are improving our food quality, we are making sure that we're portion controlling and not over consuming from a calorie perspective. We are being active and we're exercising and we're managing our stress and we're protecting our sleep quality, because those are all of the whole person pieces of the puzzle that we have to focus on. Then I can pretty much say very confidently that you will be decreasing your visceral fat.
Mm-hmm. So this condition of pre-diabetes has the potential to be reversible. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that is something that I did I want to touch on real quick. So I'm
Hmm.
glad that you brought that up because I hear so many people, in conversations, talk about, oh, I cured myself from diabetes, or, I'm no longer a diabetic. And the diabetes world has its own vocabulary, just like the cancer world has its own vocabulary. So you don't cure yourself from cancer, you are in remission.
Hmm.
So, as diabetics, if you are pre diabetic, yes, you can reverse your condition with all of the lifestyle changes that I had just mentioned, and making sure that you adhere to them. It doesn't mean that you cured yourself, because if you end up going back to the same lifestyle that you were living previously, then you are going to end up becoming a pre-diabetic again. And it's the same thing with type 2 diabetes. So you can reverse your condition, but that does not mean that you actually cured your diabetes, because you are not cured. You are just in more or less a state of remission, if that's the word that you want to use.
Hmm. That reminds me of, people who are in groups like Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had somebody ask me the other day, this guy hasn't had a drink in 30 years and he says, "Hi, I'm an alcoholic." So
Yep.
he understands that he has not cured himself. He has a condition that he has a predisposition towards allowing to control his life, and so he introduces himself as an alcoholic. And somebody asked me, well, why does that have to be? So when we mention the lifestyle, going back to the lifestyles, of course, food plays a part in that, right? Some of the foods that we should avoid are, perhaps you can give us a few.
Of course. So if anyone is listening and has listened to our previous podcast, you can probably name some of the foods with me. Portion controlling your red meat. I am going to say, literally let go of the red meat altogether. But I mean, if there's carnivores who are listening, and you can't live without your red meat, minimize it as much as possible, and literally make sure that you're portion controlling. Portion controlling is a serving size, which is 4 ounces. Making sure that you are letting go of all sugary beverages, sodas, juices as well, because those are loaded with added sugars. Your moderately to heavily processed types of carbohydrates and foods that are part of the standard American diet. They're calorie dense and not nutrient dense. So those are all the types of foods that we want to be able to let go of. And we want to be able to start adding more plant-based types of foods. So those are like your grains, your beans, your legumes, low glycemic types of fruits, which are typically all types of berries. So raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, pears, apples, just to name a few. Yeah, so that's pretty much from a food perspective.
Right, and then there's the fried foods. The people are frying foods in, all sorts of things, unhealthy lard.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're, I mean, I always tell people, if you are used to fried foods, invest in a air fryer, because an air fryer is going to give you that same, and I say it's psychological. So it's going to give you that same feeling on your taste buds, because an air fryer will still fry your food, but it's going to be a lot more healthier, because you're not utilizing the artery clogging types of oils and greases, to physically fry the food in.
Right. So, you mentioned psychological. My wife and I were just, a couple of days ago, we were looking on YouTube and researching some vegan restaurants to explore in New York City. And one thing that I found a lot of them do is offer foods that look like meat, taste like meat. And I'm saying, well, what's the psychological benefit of that? I mean, if you're trying to minimize or stay away from red meat, why would you construct something that looks like it, smells like it, and tastes like it? I mean, does that really help you get away from it, or just is that just a taste thing? So we decided that we would rather just go to find a restaurant that's not trying to imitate meat foods.
And that's great. I'm a huge advocate around the whole vegan community and what is actually going on with the, fake meats
Right.
out there. Because, yes, I always suggest to eat the real thing versus eating the heavily processed types of fake meats that are currently on the market. Just because they're loaded with chemicals and additives, and some of them can cause a lot more harm internally, than what we would expect or what we think that could actually be happening. And some people think, oh, just because it's a non-meat substitute, then it's healthier than actually eating the real thing. And in actuality, it's not.
Right. They take that non-meat substance and they deep fry it in canola oil or vegetable oil or some other type of unhealthy stuff. And really, it's psychologically, why are you chasing after the meat, as they say?
Yep. 100%.
It's like somebody drinking non-alcoholic beer or non-alcoholic wine. If you are been determined to be an alcoholic, that's probably not what you should be doing.
100%. I didn't even know there was non-alcoholic wine on the market.
Yeah, there is.
All right.
There is. So, so leaving these conditions unchecked. I mean, if you don't go to the doctor, you don't know that you have it. You go to the doctor, you find out that you do have it, and you don't do anything to try to reverse or put it into remission. What are some of the risks that lie ahead of us left if we don't deal with it? Make some behavioral changes.
So, the ultimate risk is type 2 diabetes. And I believe we will be discussing type 2 diabetes in one of our upcoming podcasts. But that is also going to lead to things like heart disease, which also will lead to strokes, which could also lead to other organ failures like kidneys, as well as the liver. So we definitely want to make sure that we are, grabbing a hold of our health and wellness and really getting these tests done. I would suggest every 6 months. I do know that there's some insurance companies out there that only will cover, these types of tests once a year. But so I would suggest trying to figure out what your insurance offers. And if you're able to get, there's 3 specific tests that you can actually take for pre-diabetes diagnosis. And I would make sure that you're either getting them biannually or annually.
Well, what about those, like I mentioned earlier, that my wife has one of those home kits that measures the sugar in the blood levels. I mean, just not as a substitute for going to the doctor, but just to begin to monitor your own sugar levels, as they call it.
No, so that's an option as well. But again, if you haven't actually had the metabolic panel of blood work done and the true diagnosis, then that is what I would suggest to do. You can go to a drugstore and buy over-the-counter. It's a glucose monitoring system, which I believe that's what you're talking about. Or you can even go to Walmart because they have those over-the-counter. So you can buy the system, the glucose monitoring system, some test strips, and then the pricker, and test your blood glucose yourself. To monitor that, yes. So that would kind of like be a prevention. kind of step that you could actually be proactive with and take care of that and do that yourself. And then if you notice that your blood sugar levels are running more on the higher side, then definitely get yourself in to get some blood work done.
Yeah, higher than 100. I've heard of people telling me they numbers are like 300.
Yes, and that's the sad part because um, there's one in every three American adults, and that's 18 or older, are currently walking around this country pre-diabetic. And then more than 80% of those, that's more than 98 million people. And more than 80% of them are not even aware that they are pre diabetic. And this is the reason why our type 2 diabetes numbers are scaled so significantly, is because of the unawareness of the 80% of the 98 million people who are pre-diabetic are walking around and not even aware of it because they have not been tested. And unfortunately, there's a lot of type 2 diabetics who aren't even aware that they're even a diabetic because they may be asymptomatic to a lot of the symptoms that type 2 diabetes typically would be experiencing. So a lot of them will not even find out that they're even a type 2 diabetic until they have to go to the doctor for another purpose and they get blood work done. And then they discover when the blood work comes back that, they're a diabetic as well.
Mm-hmm. So, as you were speaking, I somehow the thought about children came into my mind and how I encountered a young girl, she's 6 years old, who, when offered macaroni and cheese, homemade macaroni and cheese, she said, "No, I don't like that kind." And when she was offered one that was pre-packaged, I don't want to mention any brands, but something that you add water and put it in the microwave, she said, "That's the one I want." Or if you offer her chicken nuggets that you made, she know, "I like my chicken nuggets from McDonald's." So what I'm getting at is that some kids have become so conditioned to fast food and processed food that they don't even want what is homemade, as we call it.
100%. And that is where we as parents and adults in today's day and age, we have to really make sure that we are teaching our kids or even grandkids at a young age the importance of food quality, because our behaviors, as you know, our behaviors and habits as we age are instilled in us as we were kids. So it's going to be much, much harder for those kids as they become teenagers and then young adults and then grown adults to try to change their behaviors and their habits versus trying to work on that and improve them now while they're still young.
Amen. Amen. I think this is a good place to rest. Do you have any final thoughts, Stephen?
Final thoughts is, if you are diagnosed as a pre-diabetic, I just really want to say action is the best medicine. So I just want to say that again. Action is the best medicine. You have the power to change things. So what that means is, number one, getting the test done. So it's not the blind leading the blind. And then number two, the awareness is already there. So now it's just aligning things and getting a system and protocol in place that is going to help you through lifestyle changes to be able to reverse your pre-diabetes diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. And Stephen, you said that you were a diabetic lifestyle. Why don't you retell?
Diabetes lifestyle prevention coach.
Okay, so if somebody wanted to reach out to you for information or for your counseling, how would they do that?
You could reach out to me by email. So that would be Stephen, Stephen, at Master Metabolic Health and that's all one word. Or you can even shoot me a text message at 305-467-8781.
Stephen, thank you for coming in again. It's always a pleasure to have you add value to this Faith Talk platform, which is a faith-based platform, but we look at it like this. God loves you enough that he wants you to take care of your body as well. We have some skin in the game. So
100%.
So, again, you've been listening to Faith Talk. I'm Reverend J. Stewart Glover. Please visit www.reverendjstewartglover.com where you can hear this episodes, the prior episodes, and you can see Stephen's information up there. And join our global listening audience. Thank you again for listening in. God bless you. We'll see you next time.